So I know a person like me has railed harshly against cops, and for good reasons. There's a lot of arguments to be made on why cops are ruthless, why they're thugs, why the whole policing industry is so corrupted, why they need to be held on a short leash and need to be examined. They need to be held to the same standards as any other civilian. And there's a lot to be said about it. We've shown countless articles, videos, and just so much that society has shown of police officers abusing their powers and how the protect and serve community is basically so corrupted that they're just ruthless thugs and cowboys and idiots that are causing the most violence and mischief and whatnot. But I'm also a realist. And I realize that still we need cops. We need police. We need law enforcement in a healthy society. So I'm not the one to say we need to ban them. I'm not the one to say that we need to just get rid of all policing altogether. I'm saying that there needs to be a reform. But there definitely does need to be a reform because I'm about to show you example number 2578 of why the police are just absolutely corrupted and how ridiculous they are when it comes to combating actual issues. So, this article came up about a suburban mother who was handcuffed and jailed for making her 8-year-old son walk half a mile from his house. Half a mile from his house. And the mom got arrested. As if that's already crazy enough, obviously we're not just going to jump to conclusions with the headline, but just reading that alone is just absolutely nuts. And the byline says, Heather Wallace plead guilty to child endangerment. Child endangerment for her kid to walk half a mile in a suburban house, in a suburban neighborhood. Half a mile. And she's getting arrested and handcuffed and can no longer work with kids. That's crazy beyond belief. But let's get into the actual story at hand. So it says Heather Wallace's oldest son, 8-year-old Aiden, was driving his two brothers crazy in the car as they returned from karate one afternoon in October of 2021. Wallace asked Aiden to walk the rest of the way home, half a mile in quiet suburban Waco, Texas, so that he could calm down. So it's half a mile, not the longest period, and it's also a quiet suburban neighborhood. It's not like he's going through the downtown streets of New York or LA or South Chicago, any of the major metropolitan areas where they can get involved with street crimes or whatever. This is just a quiet neighborhood. And the mother got arrested for this. For this, she was arrested, handcuffed, and thrown into jail. She was charged with endangering a child, a felony carrying a mandatory minimum of 2 years in prison. So, think about that for a second. The response of endangering a child is taking the mother away from her children, throwing her into jail, into imprisonment, and having the mother abandon her kids. Do you see how messed up and screwed up the entire policing system is? That their response to a child walking home and thinking that it's endangering the child in a safe, gated community in Waco, Texas, their response is to bust the mother, throw her into jail, and have her serve a 2-year sentence. It really brought us into deep trauma, says Wallace. She is finally able to speak out after completing a 6-month parental diversion program to get the charges dropped. But her arrests remain on the books, easily searchable by employers, which is disastrous which is disastrous for someone with a bachelor's degree in education. Here's how the events unfolded. So Aiden agreed to walk home after all. So the child agreed to this. Not like mom just threw him out of the car and go, hey, you're walking. Screw you. I'm leaving you. The child agreed that I'm going to walk home, cool off, take a moment off, be alone for a bit. After all. So he agreed to walk home after all. It was something he had done many, many times. There are sidewalks the entire way and partially no traffic. No traffic. But 15 minutes later, 2 cops knocked on Wallace's door. Her son was in the patrol car. Another officer was parked across the street. So 15 minutes. There's 3 officers that show up because the kid is walking home. But if you ever notice the response time when there's an actual critical emergency, like if someone was outside your house with a gun, you ever notice that it takes like an hour and a half to get one officer to show up to the crime scene? An hour and a half for an officer to get to your house when there's actually a critical emergency. But a child walking on a sidewalk in a suburban neighborhood, 15 minutes. And you wonder why people have a distrust for the cops. You wonder why people have their own weaponry and they're trying to protect themselves. I get it. This is why I understand about the Second Amendment and the need to protect yourself. Because literally, cops are useless in this situation. You're in a critical emergency. They wait around for an hour and a half, but 15 minutes show up because the kid's walking on a sidewalk. I mean, look at the response time when they show up when there's a peaceful protest. There's thousands of officers magically gathering together in riot gear. But there was no officers when a school shooting happens. There's no officers around when there's potential harmful endangerment. When you're actually in a critical emergency. Somehow they're just not around. A woman 1 block away had called the cops to report a boy walking outside alone. That lady had actually asked Aiden where he lived, verified that it was just down the street, and proceeded to call nonetheless. The cops picked up Aiden on his own block. As they stood on her porch, the officers told Wallace that her son could have been kidnapped and sex trafficked. So, because the kid is walking on the street in a quiet neighborhood, the cops have to rush over there, pick the son up, drive him literally not even half a block down his house, and fearmonger the mother to say that the son could have been kidnapped or sex trafficked. Was Jeffrey Epstein in the neighborhood? Is Bill Clinton around there? Is one of the pedophiles that we know about? Is Bill Gates driving around Waco, Texas to pick up young boys? You don't see much sex trafficking where you are. So why are you fear-mongering then? Why are you fear-mongering then? It's literally a quiet suburban neighborhood. Why are you bringing this up? Why are you scaring the mother? Why are you making her a frantic mess right now? The kid agreed to walk outside and cool off because there was argument and tensions inside the car that was pissing everybody off. But where I patrol in downtown Waco, we do, said one of the cops according to Wallace. Well, he's not in downtown, dumbass. He's in his own neighborhood. He's literally down the block. He's in a quiet suburban community in Texas with neighbors watching and surveilling. Holy crap. This statement struck her as odd. Yeah, no kidding. You basically admitted that it's a safe neighborhood, but yet you have to fearmonger her because you go to the other side of town where there is endangerment. Well, he's not on the other side of town, officer. So why are you fearmongering me? Why are you putting me in shame? Why are you doing this to me? Why are you... Now I'm abandoning my kids because you're throwing me into jail and leaving my kids alone because my son agreed to walk on his own? Walk down the street to his own house? They were basically admitting that it was a safe neighborhood, she said. The officers then asked Wallace whether she could let her son walk home again now that she knew about the sex trafficking. Oh my God. Oh my God. This is how... Oh my God. What are these people doing? Honest to God, what are these people doing? They're not serving, they're not protecting. What is this? What kind of law enforcement is this? So, you're basically kidnapping your son to start with. The kid was perfectly fine, walking on his own. He's literally less than half a mile from his house. You can probably see it in the distance. He could have ran easily to his own house. And the cops came by, grabbed the son, put him in the patrol car, drove him to the house, and then fear-mongering the mother. Holy crap. I still don't know it was illegal. And I said, I don't know, says Wallace. That's when the cops replied, okay, I'm going to have to arrest you. So now, again, this is where cops become ruthless thugs. They're not thinkers. They're not the intelligent ones. They're the ruthless cowboys with handguns, and they're able to crack you down and mess you up. They shoot first and ask questions later, or barely ask questions at all. He proceeded to do so in front of the kids, handcuffing Wallace behind her back. By this point, the cops had allowed Aiden to get out of the car and called Wallace's husband, who arrived at home. They then put Wallace in the cruiser. She didn't have her shoes on, but the cops told her the jail would provide a pair. It didn't. In the back seat, still handcuffed, Wallace was interviewed by a caseworker with Texas Child Protective Services. All in all, it was about 3 hours from the time the cops showed up to the time, around 8:30 p.m., that they drove Wallace to the McLean County Jail, where she was locked up. I'm a suburban mom. I didn't know what I was doing, says Wallace. I got booked at 4 a.m. The next day, Wallace's husband paid her $300 bail and then went home. So, in all this time and chaos, they could have just easily let the child safely walk home. Like, why wouldn't the cops just be like, hey, I'll monitor the situation. You just keep on walking, you go home. I'll monitor the situation, I'll be your backup. Instead of this chaos, instead of this insanity, that you know is a safe neighborhood. You know it's exactly perfectly safe for this child to be able to walk home. I've walked home in more dangerous situations than this kid. Unbelievable. And now it's costing her. Now it's costing her money to bail her out because her kid agreed to walk home and cool off. When Aiden heard his mom come in, he looked up, panic-stricken. I ate your piece of cake, he confessed. I didn't know when you were ever coming home. Child Services had the family agreed to a safety plan, which meant Wallace and her husband could not be alone with the kids, not even for a second. Their mothers, the children's grandmothers, had to visit and trade off overnight stays in order to guarantee the parents were consistently supervised. After 2 weeks, Child Services closed Wallace's case, finding the complaint was unfounded. Wow. So, you arrested her, she had to pay bail money, you had 2 caseworkers, you had the grandparents also involved to monitor the situation because apparently this mother is such a terrible mother. Such a terrible mother to allow her 8-year-old son, who the 8-year-old son agreed to, walk half a mile in a quiet neighborhood. Holy crap. No wonder why, again, no wonder why cops have a bad reputation. Like, you do this to yourself. You do this to yourself. It's not the public. It's not the public going fanatic or having this radical thought that cops are evil. No, you're doing exactly evil. You're doing the most maniacal piece of crap garbage in law enforcement. You're a joke to society. You're completely screwing up the entire process. Purposely. Wallace believes this could have been due to the Reasonable Childhood Independence Law that Texas passed in 2021 with the help of Let Grow, the nonprofit I co-founded. She co-founded. And now she's getting attacked with it. Unbelievable. It's part of HB 567, a larger child welfare reform bill that clarifies the parents are allowed to let their kids engage in independent activities as long as they're not putting them in serious likely danger. But he wasn't. The cops even admitted to it. I'm encouraged to see CPS, that's the Child Services, follow the law the legislature enacted to protect parents from government interference when they make reasonable parenting decisions, says Andrew Brown, Associate Vice President of Policy at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, which worked on the bill. Unfortunately, the law amended our only family, not criminal law, which meant the cops were still free to punish Wallace. She obtained a lawyer who told her that she had to admit guilty. She could participate in a parental diversion program that would have closed the case. On the other hand, if she went to trial and lost, she'd face a minimum of 2 years behind bars and a maximum of 20. So she took the plea deal. Unbelievable. This is our society. This is law enforcement, ladies and gentlemen. And if you still want to back the blue and say that they're the most wonderful, intelligent people, like, again, how many examples do I have to show you to remind you that these are not to be trusted? That cops are nefarious figures, that cops will abuse their powers, which is why we need to hold them on a short leash, which is why we need to expose them for the crap that they do on the regular. And we need to hold them accountable, just like we would do with anybody else. Just because they're law enforcement, just because they wear the badge, doesn't protect them from civil society. It doesn't protect them and allow them to do endangerment to their own community, because they're doing more endangerment to this family than what the mother is doing to her child. They're endangering more of the community by doing this charade, by prosecuting this woman and causing her to pay bail money, taking her to trial, constantly being surveilled, notifying the neighbors. So now the neighbors know how evil and nefarious this woman is, even though it was the 8-year-old son's decision, his own decision, to walk home in a safe neighborhood, which the cops admitted to, and it just made this even worse. When literally the cops could have just easily, been the backup and just allowed this kid to walk home. It's a safe neighborhood. You admit to it. It's not downtown. It's not the ruthless hustle and bustle of New York City. It's not a bad neighborhood where he's walking down an alleyway 2 o'clock in the morning. This is afternoon on a school day in a suburban neighborhood. And the cops came in 15 minutes or less. But yet when there's actual critical emergency, it takes about, an hour and a half. I've seen critical emergencies that lasted 3 hours because cops are somehow nowhere to be found. Just what a joke it is. Literally what a joke it is.